Welcome to another short subject from EducateVirtually.com. Today we're going to take a look at the process designed for Six Sigma roadmap, which is in the backdrop behind me. We're going to walk through this in good detail so you'll fully understand how this roadmap can help you out. If you want your copy, it's available at EducateVirtually.com in our store. So let's get to it. We start with process design for Six Sigma is defined by the DMADV process. The DMADV process is define, measure, analyze, design, validate. Those are the 5 steps, the 5 phases. Well, what does it actually mean? Well, define phase is really a development project definition. The measure phase is the requirements definition. The analyze phase is your conceptual design. The design phase is the conversion from a conceptual to a detailed design. And then in the validate phase, that's where we do our testing, our validation, and actually implement the new process. Now, a couple of features of this roadmap, which is geared toward being a step-by-step guide to help you with developing new processes for your organization. We've used this with great success with many clients. The roadmap is highlighted down here. Each of the phases is laid out, and we've identified all of the tools and methods that you're going to need to use within those phases. In the swim lanes for each of the phases of DMADV within the Design for Six Sigma process, we've laid out the activities and the deliverables that you are going to need to do and complete to get each phase done. All right, so let's start with the define phase. The tools would be a project charter, business case, a communication plan, change management plan, the use of failure mode effects analysis, the deliverables project plan, and that is going to give you everything you need to define your project. All right, so this is a development project definition. And we walk through each of those, confirm that it's worthwhile to the organization to do this. You put together your project charter and your business case initially. What are the goals, objectives, and what are your success criteria? Define the process description and the conceptual organization at a very high level here. Develop your communication and change management plans. You're going to be implementing change. It's very important to be able to communicate. FMEA, so you can understand the risks for that process that hasn't yet been developed. What are the risks if you develop it? What are the risks if you don't develop it? Develop a plan to mitigate the FMEA risks, and then build your project plan that includes all the phase gate deliverables. That is your development project definition. Then we move from that. These are our connectors. It says go to A, and here's where A starts, which is in the measure phase now. And here we're going to develop and execute voice of the customer data collection and information capture. All right, this is going to include internal and external customers and the suppliers that provide inputs to your process. That's all very important, because how often are we faced with, well, our suppliers didn't give us what we were looking for. Well, did we give them the proper information so they can fulfill our requirements? So we need to understand what their requirements are so they can fulfill ours. All right, so this is requirements definition. So we capture the voice of the customer, we translate that into our critical to quality requirements for the design. We then take a look at the functional requirements, just what is it that this design has to do so that we can mitigate all of those FMEA risks that we identified up here in the define phase. All right, we use quality function deployment, the matrix method, for prioritizing and looking at the relationships between the functions and the voice of the customer. Define our skill requirements for the organization and what are going to be the key performance metrics and tracking requirements so that we can guarantee and measure success, and we'll have a sustainable process that we've just developed. All right, that is our requirements definition. Now we move into the conceptual design phase. All right, here we're going to take our requirements and we're going to take those functional requirements and we're going to begin to convert those into the sub-processes that will be comprised to build up to the full-blown process that we're developing. All right, so we finalize our functional staffing requirements, do another pass at the QFD just to validate that we are on the same page with the management team, with the project development team, with process participants, so that everybody's in agreement that yes, this does make sense. Then we begin to move into defining the concepts for the new processes and the support systems. What kind of IT support systems are you going to need to execute those new processes? Now in this stage we're at the high level, conceptual design. So we use the SIPOC process mapping method. Who are our suppliers? What are the inputs they provide? What are the high level 5 process steps? What are the outputs from each of those process steps? And who are the customers that they go to? It could be the internal customer, external customer, it could be to a supplier. All right, so we use the SIPOC to develop those, and then we begin to evaluate what is going to be the flow of operation, the flow of materials, goods, services that are going to go through this particular process, so that we can begin to understand what kind of volumes, what are the staffing requirements, what are the skill requirements, and what are the support system requirements to execute that high-level conceptual design. All right, and then we evaluate each one of those SIPOC process maps for capability against our key performance metrics so we can evaluate our process signal levels. All right, that completes our conceptual design phase. All right, then we move into the detailed design. So here we're going to take the conceptual designs and we're going to convert those into detailed designs. So we're going to take those SIPOC process maps, and what we want to do is compare those in a finalized QFD to look at process components and systems versus functional requirements. All right, so we want to make sure that these conceptual designs are going to meet the functional requirements and they're going to meet our voice of the customer. So the QFD has a cascading nature so that it flows from the voice of the customer through the functional requirements. Functional requirements help us prioritize the processes and the systems, and then those are going to lead into the organizational structure, design, skills, roles, etc. All right, so the development process, we begin to take a look at management control plans, finalize roles and responsibilities in the organization. All right, we've developed testing plans for our new process. We utilize the QFD to tie everything together, making sure we're still connected back to our voice of the customer. We test our components, complete our design reviews, and then we're ready to move into the final phase, which is validate, where we test, validate, and implement our new process. Here's where we got to put all the documents together. We need to have all the procedures, work instructions, policies, so that we can seamlessly execute from step to step to step within our new detailed process all of those process steps. So we're going to do some pilot testing to make sure that all those policies, procedures, and work instructions will help us get through our process maps that are in detail. So we migrate from those SIPOCs into our swim lane type deployment process flow maps, which is what this would be. All right. Then we've done that pilot testing. If we have to revise or update any of the documents, we do it at this point. Okay, we put together the training, we begin to implement the new process, we put our management and control plans in place, and then transition the ownership from this process design for Six Sigma team. We want to transition that ownership to the management team, who's going to own the process and who are going to be the process participants who will be executing the process. All right, so quickly we went through this roadmap, and to support you, we have some tools identified. So in the measure phase, you're going to be looking at VOC plans, functional trees, FMEA, you're going to use QFD, key performance metrics. You start the analyze phase, we use QFD again. QFD, quality function deployment, is one of our powerful tools in this design process. You're developing a new process, so we need some tools to help us keep organized, to remember that we tie everything back to the voice of the customer. All right, analyze phase. We're going to use QFD, SIPOC, process activity analysis. We're going to look at org structures. In the design phase, we get into our deployment or swim lane process maps, more QFD, test planning, process management and control plans, communication plans, organizational structure. We get into the validate phase, deployment process maps again, which is how we finalize our processes. We look at our policies and procedures and work instructions. We do conference room piloting to test everything out, training plan development, and then we implement the plan for management, control, and communication. So that's how we get the process implemented. So this roadmap is your guide to design for Six Sigma. And hopefully we gave you a good representation of our process design for Six Sigma roadmap. I think you'll find it very useful. We've used it with many client teams. It helps everybody to understand, okay, what do we have to get done? What are the steps? And we know what our deliverables are. If we manage to the deliverables, we can get our projects done in a reasonable amount of time. Well, thank you for your attention. This was brought to you by EducateVirtually.com.